Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Shauna Kalafi, taking a live look at Santa Fe, New Mexico tonight. Today in New Mexico, a jury determined that Meta knowingly harmed children's mental health and concealed what it knew about child sexual exploitation on its social media platforms. We have a clip of the judge in this case reading the verdict today. Let's listen in.
So, on question 1, did Meta violate the Unfair Practices Act by engaging in an unfair or deceptive trade practice? The jury answers yes. Question 2, did Meta act willfully by engaging in an unfair or deceptive trade practice? The answer is yes. Question 3, in accordance with the civil penalty instruction and the instructions as a whole, how many willful violations did Meta commit by engaging in an unfair or deceptive trade practice? The jury's answer is 37,500. In accordance with the civil penalty instruction and the instructions as a whole, we determined that the civil penalty amount per violation in question 3 should be as follows. And with the answer between $0 and $5,000, the answer is $5,000. Question 5, did Meta violate the Unfair Practices Act by engaging in an unconscionable trade practice? The jury's answer is yes. Question 6, did Meta act willfully by engaging in an unconscionable trade practice? The jury's answer is yes. Question number 7. In accordance with the civil penalty instruction and the instructions as a whole, how many willful violations did Meta commit by engaging in an unconscionable trade practice? The jury's answer is 37,000. Question 8. In accordance with the civil penalty instruction and the instructions as a whole, we determined that the civil penalty amount per violation in question number 7 should be as follows. And with a number between $0 and $5,000, the jury's answer is $5,000. Ladies and gentlemen, did I correctly read that verdict? Yes. All right. On the record, the court notes that the jury has corrected the answer to question number 7 so that that number is not 37,000, but will be 37,500, which will make it the same as the jury's answer to question number 3, which was also 37,500.
That was the judge in that New Mexico courtroom reading the verdict in this case against Meta. And for more on this trial, we want to bring in Neama Rahmani, a legal expert and former federal prosecutor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, Shauna, thanks for having me. A historic day, I think, will change social media apps forever.
Yeah, this is a really landmark trial and decision here. So can you break down the arguments in this New Mexico trial? It took almost 7 weeks to reach this verdict, this very significant verdict, as you said.
Very significant. The New Mexico Attorney General filed a lawsuit alleging unfair business practices, and they had their investigators go in and pose as minors, as children on Facebook and Instagram. And those investigators were targeted with sexually explicit images, and they were contacted by child predators. So they filed this lawsuit, as did many other attorney generals throughout the country, including in California, where I'm sitting, where a Los Angeles jury is deliberating a separate case. And we got a pretty quick verdict. Closing arguments were yesterday, and the conventional wisdom is that a quick verdict is usually a defense verdict because jurors need time to award big money. But it wasn't the case at all. They came back fast, and they came back with the maximum possible penalty for each violation. So this was an overwhelming win for the state of New Mexico and the Attorney General. And obviously, New Mexico isn't the most populous state. So Meta is facing much greater exposure in other states, but importantly, even in New Mexico, we're not out of the woods yet. Jurors, they can award money damages, but the AG there is also asking for an injunction in order for Meta to change its algorithm, change its practices, the way it does business and interacts with minors. That's going to be a separate trial before a judge, and a judge is going to determine what changes that Meta has to make.
And in terms of this verdict today in New Mexico, Meta did put out a statement following that decision. We want to read that. They said, "We respectfully disagree with the verdict and will appeal. We work hard to keep people safe on our platforms and are clear about the challenges of identifying and removing bad actors or harmful content. We will continue to defend ourselves vigorously, and we remain confident in our record of protecting teens online." So Meta saying they do plan to appeal. How quickly could we see that, and what can we expect from that appeal process?
Oh, we're going to see an appeal very soon. Obviously, it's going to take months for all that to play out, but expect this type of case potentially to go not just to the New Mexico Supreme Court, but even the U.S. Supreme Court, because Meta has three primary arguments. The first is that federal law grants them immunity, and this is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act that protects big tech from the content that's placed on its platforms. Now, importantly here, the AG is saying this isn't about the content at all. This is actually about the algorithm itself, the technology, the application. It itself is dangerous. It's not just the predators that are on there. So this is essentially like a dangerous product. And the way they litigated these cases, Shauna, is actually similar to how big tobacco was sued many years ago, or the cases against the big opioid companies. And I'm old enough to remember when we used to have smoking sections in restaurants and on airplanes. And because of that litigation, that completely changed the way people thought about the dangers of cigarettes. And I think this verdict today is just the beginning. I think people are starting to realize, and I have two teenage kids, that these apps can be dangerous for children. And this is probably just the first of many dominoes to fall.
And we do want to talk about that other trial in California, as you mentioned. I know you've been keeping your eye on that as well. This is a similar case happening in California. Jurors in a federal court have been deliberating on that for more than a week about whether Meta and YouTube should be liable. So what's the difference between these two trials and the significance of both of them happening at the same time?
So the trial in California is a bellwether trial for an individual, a woman who said that she was harmed because of her addiction to social media apps. So it's a little bit different. It's not filed by an attorney general, it's filed by an individual plaintiff. But obviously, we know that there are many people, because of social media apps, that have developed depression, anxiety, all sorts of mental health issues. Some have even gone so far as to harm themselves or to harm others. So that is a different type of case, and there's many thousands of people who have sued these apps all over the country. So folks are watching. Meta and YouTube have spent a lot of time litigating this case. They've attacked this victim, saying that her mental health issues were related to issues at home, a traumatic divorce, and that the parents should be responsible for monitoring their children. So it's going to be an interesting case. Obviously, we have Meta and we have YouTube, and the jury in this case has had a tough time reaching a verdict. Now we're at day 10 of deliberations. So the question is, are they going to reach a verdict? Are they going to hang? Are they going to reach a verdict with respect to Meta, which arguably appears to maybe have more liability, or at least potential liability, than YouTube, which is a little bit more of a streaming service? So I think it's going to be a very telling case. If Meta and if YouTube lose this case as well, then they really have significant legal problems all throughout the country.
And in terms of this verdict today in New Mexico, this really does signal a changing tide against tech companies, as well as the government's willingness to crack down on those tech companies. What kind of precedent does this decision set, and could this lead to more widespread changes or even policy changes when it comes to these different social media platforms, not just Meta?
I think we are going to start seeing significant changes. And really, obviously, you have Meta, a company that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, but still, this is a significant hit to them, even if the judgment is reduced on appeal. I mean, the PR look is terrible. And I think what you might start to see, if not at the federal level, certainly at the states, are states that regulate social media apps just like they do tobacco and other drugs, where you can't be on, Meta or Snapchat or TikTok unless you're 16 years old or even 18 years old. We might start seeing those types of restrictions. If these companies can't regulate themselves and protect children from predators and online porn, then you might see state legislatures and even the federal government step in to do so.
So some big changes possibly coming to our social media landscape. Thank you so much, Neama Rahmani, legal analyst, for your perspective here. We will certainly be watching that California trial as well to see what comes from that. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course, Shauna. Thanks for having me. Talk real soon.
Thank you. I'll step away for a 2-minute break. We'll be right back with much more.